Pokemon Santo.
Gotta catch 'em all.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Busted Business Bureau. My name is Christian Borky. I am produced by the Lincoln Lodge Comedy Theater in Chicago. And I am joined again by my Monsantos, Amy Doe and Blender Bluid.
Yeah.
See, you're embracing it now 3 hours in.
Yeah, we have fully, if you're listening, if this is your first episode of Busted Business Bureau, you need to know for context, we've been trapped in this room for like 3 hours.
There's paper all over the floor.
really
I'm
is.
looking at the president
Comical
of
amounts of notes.
I'm looking at the president of Ukraine's deformed face right next to my backpack.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot happening. So, this podcast is produced by the Lincoln Lodge. If you like the pod, please consider supporting me on patreon.com/bustedbizbureau. You're currently listening to Season 3, the Monsanto season. Each episode stands on its own, but if you want the full picture, listen to the whole season. Drink check. We got a water. We got nothing over there. Fantastic.
I used to have water down here. It got consumed towards the end of episode 2.
Absolutely.
I'm consolidating.
We don't need to really recap, but our first episode is an overview. Our second episode was about war crimes. Yeah. Let's headline today's episode with a quote. Quote, "The accumulation of chemical pollution was gradual, unspectacular, and often imperceptible. Its health impact latent. Chemical pollution moves by intimate invasion at minute scale, often apprehended only by chemical tests or biological assays, illegible without specialized equipment and training." This quote comes from Ellen Griffith Spears' book, Baptized in PCBs, Race, Pollution, and Justice in an All-American Town.
Racism alert. Let's go.
As you can imagine, this is going to be the pollution episode, the racism episode, and it's going to take the shape of 3 stories. These 3 individual stories are all connected by Monsanto, but otherwise take place completely independently of each other, which is part of the problem, shall we say. But before we get into that, do you 2 know what the Superfund is?
Yeah.
Nope.
Tell me about it, Amy.
So a super...
You know what? I'm tired of you asking us questions so that I can reveal that I'm a dumbass and Amy's smart. Jesus.
I should have set the questions in advance so you could have studied the questions. But
So,
I'll ask a Naruto question next. Sorry, Amy, tell me about the Superfund.
So the Superfund is a fund that's set up, I think it's by the EPA. And if a space has been sufficiently defiled by corporate activity or pollution or Monsanto, then it's designated as like a Superfund site. It's not a good thing. And then that is how you can get money from the Superfund. I don't know how much it is. I don't know if it's regulated. I don't know what the steps are to become designated as bad enough to be a Superfund site. But then it becomes the government's responsibility to like take a certain role in like cleaning it up and making it better.
That's
See, I actually knew that. So I thought you said super fun, and I didn't know. So
You're like a super fun site, like Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, unaware.
So the origin of the Superfund has nothing to do necessarily with Monsanto, but let's talk about it. In the 1920s, there's this spot of land in New York that was established by William Love in the 1800s. I think it was...
Love wins.
Yeah, Love wins. It was used by the Hooker Chemical Company throughout the 50s as a dumping site for a frankly astonishing mix of chemicals, nearly all of which are incredibly carcinogenic.
No.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that this part is called the Love Canal. Like, it's literally called the Love Canal.
Oh my gosh. I know about
Yeah, the Love
From
Canal.
Hey Arnold.
Yeah, I was thinking way dirtier, but I'm glad you made it nice. The Love Canal.
Hey.
You want to come over to New York? You and me can take a trip down to the Love Canal.
Quit smoking cigarettes with that voice over there.
I was like, there's a Diva Cup in my Love Canal right now.
Ever Given is stuck in my Love Canal.
The Hooker Chemical Company put a bunch of dirt over this landfill of, again, astonishingly deadly chemicals and sold it to New York for $1. Residents moved in, had disturbingly high rates of body-related human misery, miscarriages, birth defects, rare cancers, you name it. They get national media attention for their protests in 1978 as they'd found out the probable cause of their suffering was pollution. Jimmy Carter allocates federal funds to fix the situation, and in 1980, in the wake of the now stronger environmental movement, the Love Canal is far from the only site in desperate need of emergency cleanup. So in 1980, the Reagan administration creates the Superfund. Because of the question of corporate liability was, I guess, a question, Reagan created this tax-based fund that would give the EPA enough money to clean up this newly emerging pile of environmental disasters in the U.S. without forcing responsible corporations to cough up the money. Almost immediately, the Reagan administration begins misappropriating the funds. Like, they start funding Republican candidates. Like, they just fuck it up.
Clean up your act a little.
So that we'll talk about later, but a Superfund site, like you said, is explicitly meant for humans to not live in and for the EPA to clean up. If you've become a Superfund site, you're at a level of environmental degradation that's hard to fathom. So here's a story of Monsanto Superfund sites.
Woo!
Oh, yeah.
Choo-choo, everybody get on the
Racism.
bus.
Yeah, yeah.
The wheels on the bus go Monsanto.
Jesus.
So
They're
this one,
triangular wheels, very hard to
That's
turn.
right.
this one isn't racism-y as the second one. So we're starting off with this first one in Times Beach, Missouri.
Ooh.
Sturgeon. Missouri's really been fucked over by Monsanto.
Because they were headquartered in St. Louis,
Right.
and then later went to Creve Coeur, which is
Creve Coeur.
Creve Coeur for heartbreak. So the flag has a heart that's broken on it, but the heartbreak is like a river.
Oh,
That's kind of sweet.
Heartbreak River.
Oh, I was ready. You can keep
Yeah,
going.
you could have kept going.
Those are the only lyrics to the song.
All right. Burgeoning Red Hot Chili Peppers fan has no Heartbreak River song by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I guess. So Times Beach, Missouri was incorporated in 1925 by wayward St. Louis travelers looking to take their summer at the beach. The town grew over time to about 1,400 people as a combination of the Great Depression and World War II had made it not possible for people to summer anymore. You get it?
I love people who use summer as a verb.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck summer.
I hate
Fall,
summer.
baby.
Fall is in.
Layer season.
Fall is in. I want me some fall. Get me some fall.
What is this energy?
I was
Christians from the 1920s all of a sudden. What's going on?
No, that was a What We Do in the Shadows quote. I don't know why I can't remember. He's like, gay is in, gay is hot. I want me some gay. Nandor, get over here. All right. In the 1970s, one particular resident of Times Beach, Missouri is Russell Bliss. Oh, yeah. Russell Bliss is a little
Pokemon alert.
entrepreneur. He's actually not a... we'll talk about it. Okay. He's a little entrepreneur. He's a girl boss. He owns a business called Bliss Waste Oil Company. And
We got Love Canal. We got Bliss
got
Waste
Bliss.
Oil Company.
I know, so romantic. Bliss Waste Oil Company. And he also owns a horse farm. And he decides... Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I needed to say more about Times Beach, Missouri. So over the time, it had become this town of 1,400 people. Like, it was not particularly wealthy people that moved in.
Right. Because the whole point was it was, like, marketed as a destination for people who weren't rich enough to actively go to, like, an actual beach. Like,
I think it has beaches there. Actually, don't quote me on that. Oh, anyways, there's no, like, paved roads. Like, it's all dirt roads. There's a lot of, like, flooding that happens.
Heartbreak River.
Heartbreak River, exactly. So anyways... Russell Bliss, oil company, horse farm, combines his two interests, always a good idea, and discovers that spraying down his dusty stable with oil keeps the dust settled. I think that's a thing in the horse world. And it seemed to be a good solution. Pardon?
oil?
Oil, yeah.
Oh, everything I know about horses is from the movie Nope.
That was a really good movie.
Yeah.
You know what? This kind of descends into Nope territory. So
Oh,
let's talk about it.
shit.
Judy Piat, the owner of Shenandoah Stables in Moscow Mills, which is a different town.
Moscow Mules.
Moscow Mills.
Oh.
Moscow Mules is like, oh, cool. I have a horse show
Hogs.
coming up. Can you like spray down my arena, Russell? It's all dusty. He accepts, and what follows is like a fucking horror movie.
No.
Birds begin dropping dead from the rafters of the stables. Horses
shit.
become emaciated, develop sores, and like all die when they leave the horse show. Healthy horses who came to the show leave, and weeks later develop awful abdominal conditions, many of whom had to be euthanized. Piat's daughters, this is the only body horror, I promise. Piat's daughters, who often played in the stable, fall incredibly ill and are hospitalized. According to her medical report, one of her daughter's urine was, quote, grossly bloody and contaminated clots. Which I only put that in because a medical report describing something as gross was funny to me.
Yeah, the doctor was like, oh.
It was yucky.
Yeah. Like I went through all of medical school and I'm like, ugh. So at that point, the CDC was called in, but for the next 3 years, epidemiologists were stumped. Immediately, Piat makes the connection to the oil. She removes layers and layers of dirt from the barn and becomes obsessed with documenting Bliss Waste Oil Company's moves, but she's unable to prevent what is to come. From Marie Monique Robbins' The World According to Monsanto, in the early 1970s, the not very wealthy town of Times Beach decided to try and deal with the problem of the dust that covered its unpaved roads.
Oh, no.
The town decided to call on the services of Bliss Waste Oil Company,
No.
a company that collects waste oil and industrial waste from gas stations and chemical plants in Missouri. The company's head, Russell Bliss, suggests spraying mud mixed with the oil on the streets of Times Beach.
No.
Raggy. And you know that they were probably like, this is such a smart business move. We're giving money back into the community. Like, this is like a...
Honestly, probably they're like, this is so green. We're like using waste to like put something down, you know? Like, it's the most 70s solution to a problem I've ever heard.
Yeah,
blasting
it was.
oil.
This reeks of I know a guy.
Like, Silent Spring came out in 1962, y'all. Anyways. Wow. From Marjorie Sun's article in Science.org, quote, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources estimates that Bliss sprayed at least 18,500 gallons of oil around the state.
Jesus Christ.
Again, Bliss Waste Oil Company collects waste oil from industrial waste plants around Missouri. As you remember, Monsanto has several factories in Missouri and in Sauget, Illinois, which is right there, which is right across the river. So when Russell Bliss sprayed down the town, the scene also plays out remarkably similar to that in Moscow Mills.
Oh, no.
Although less pronounced, birds by the basket are sick and dying, raccoons, dogs, cats, etc. A resident of Time Beach contacts the EPA, who informs them to keep a sample of dead animals frozen so they can come collect it. The EPA never came.
Oh!
So, you're thinking, everyone left Times Beach shortly after, right? Wrong! The EPA quietly conducted an investigation for years without letting the residents know, having started an inquiry in 1972. No one made any effort to leave the town. They just noticed that animals were not thriving. And also, like, do you logically think you're being poisoned around town? Like, no. Like, that just doesn't come to your mind.
Right.
There could be an animal plague. It could be a combination of factors. No one's mind immediately goes to the oil because, again, it's way less pronounced than in Moscow Mills.
Right.
So on November 10th, 1982, 10 years after the initial inquiry, the town alderman, Marilyn Lessner, was informed by the EPA that the town was contaminated with dioxin. On December 3rd, 1982, the EPA swings by to collect some oil samples. On December 5th, 1982, there's an unrelated giant flood that wreaks havoc on the town. As I said before, there's lots of flooding. The town was built on like fucking stilts, for God's sake, so the residents are evacuated because of the flooding. When they try to come back after the flood, around December 23rd, the EPA lets them know you can never go back. Merry Christmas, the amount of dioxin in the soil is 300 times the amount what is like humane to live in.
That's nuts.
Oh my God.
Back to Robin. Quote, on February 22nd, 1983, Ann Buford, the administrator of the EPA, announced that the government had decided to buy Times Beach for the sum of $300 million. The extraordinary plan was proposed to indemnify and relocate all of the residents, tear down the town, and decontaminate the site, then burn the contaminated soil in an incinerator. Which is also so freaking 70s or 80s or whatever.
Just burn it?
Burn it. Burn it. It'll go into the sky where it turns into stars.
Burn it.
Like, that's It's Always Sunny reference. Despite all of the information provided to the EPA by Judy Piat, who had been documenting feverishly the whole time, the town was not made aware of the dioxin poisoning until in its soil until 10 years after it had been pissed all over the streets. Leisner, the town alderman who later became mayor when the mayor and his Monsanto-connected assistant skipped town, recalled that her entire family also had debilitating skin and hormone issues that they just never knew was connected to the oil.
Oh, wow.
God damn.
The EPA's plan went into fruition. Everyone from Times Beach, Missouri was relocated. They couldn't even get their possessions, like family photos, heirlooms, anything, just gone.
Wow.
Oh my
Their
God.
entire life just swept out. All they had was what they carried in the flood,
Right.
which even then was likely contaminated. They were all relocated. Their homes, their belongings, their toys, their cherished objects. Everything was buried and burnt because of this oil, and it becomes a Superfund site. So I wanted to, again, just like pause and emphasize the scale of the tragedy here. How completely horrific it is to be like run out of your town overnight. Times Beach is declared a Superfund site before finally being disincorporated in 1985 and fully demolished in 1992. People's lives are completely turned around. And I would love to have a punchy sentence right here about how, just about it, but that's what it is. What comes out later is the oil that Bliss had been collecting was in fact Monsanto oil. Like that is the connection here. It is hilarious how much he just pissed it all over town despite knowing that it fucked up Judy Piat's stables.
Yeah.
Like this, not since Thomas Midgley Jr. has there been one guy with such a negative environmental impact. Does anyone understand the reference?
No.
I'm putting my papers down. Thomas Majorly Jr. was an inventor in the 1800s who was behind lead gasoline and chlorofluorocarbons, which are like this single-handedly thing that ate the ozone layer.
Damn.
And then he fell sick when he was in his later period in his life and developed an invention to like help him out of bed. That invention strangled him to death.
Oh, shit.
That is the legacy of Thomas Midgley Jr. God, that is from like a Vsauce video I saw in 2013. So
Damn.
I retained a lot. I retain a
Serves him
lot.
right.
I retain a lot when I watch YouTube. That was unrelated. So, anyways, I was checking the time just to make sure that we're not going too far over. So, anyways, I would love a punchy sentence here about how Monsanto knew that they were supplying Russell Bliss with dioxin-laced oil, but that turns out to be a trickier question than you'd first think. The question of liability. For its part, Monsanto denies being a customer of Russell Bliss, despite the fact that he testified in court that they were, and that a driver at his company recalled going to Monsanto's headquarters in Sauget and Queenie and whatever to pick up the oil. There were no written contracts that anyone was able to find. People speculate that Bliss was paid to destroy the contracts. With the gift of hindsight, though, here's more that we have from Robin. Quote, in investigating a misuse of the Superfund program budget, some of which had been fraudulently used to finance the electoral campaigns of Republican candidates, Congress discovered that documents that would compromise the companies had disappeared. The investigation proved that the Reagan administration, known for its unstinting support of big business, had ordered Ann Buford to freeze the Times Beach case.
Whoa.
Appointed as EPA administrator shortly after Reagan's inauguration, she was forced to resign following the scandal. In March of 1983, her deputy, Rita Lavelle, had even worse luck. She was sentenced to 6 months in prison on charges of perjury and obstructing a congressional investigation. The investigation, by the way, revealed that she had shredded a number of incriminating documents and that she frequently lunched with representatives from Monsanto.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And this was back when nothing was in the cloud.
My God, nothing was in the cloud.
My God, nothing was in the cloud.
You couldn't hack the system. Couldn't
So
be
if
like,
you shredded it, it was
I'm in.
gone.
I know. Can you imagine just like how nuts that was to live with paper?
That's nuts, yo.
I'm simply 20. I'm in my 20s.
The
I'm
good old man.
goo goo gaga. So I realize this is kind of an unsatisfying story because Monsanto, which remember had known about the ill effects of dioxin as early as like 1949, knew it was a byproduct in its chemical waste, and then maybe...
And also they were just throwing it out with everything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're just like blasting it. We'll talk about like they just dump it wherever. But it's kind of an unsatisfying story because it's like they maybe supplied this dioxin-laced oil to a company known for like pouring it all over residential towns, and it didn't say a word. The connection to Monsanto has again never been legally proven, although it's heavily implied.
Right.
I picked the story to start with to one, make fun of Russell Bliss.
What an idiot.
What a dumbass. 18,000 gallons.
Oh. And he never thought about, I wonder why they're throwing this away.
Yeah. No, like, Judy Piat, for her part, was like, Russell, you poisoned my barn.
Yeah.
Like, he was made well aware that
Right.
this shit was dangerous. And he was like, no. He was like, I don't listen to women.
Boom. My
Bang,
name's
bang.
Russell Bliss.
Oy vey. So, never has, yeah. This guy, so, that's the first reason I picked the story. Second, I picked the story to emphasize the political mechanisms at work protecting companies like Monsanto. Also, this story is just like more funny and punchy than the one I'm about to dive into. So,
Oh, shit.
so there's one guy just going like, I'm gonna recreate the movie Nope. Just have all these horses get all sick and die.
The birds falling out of the sky. God, that's so terrifying.
I know.
Birds flying high.
I like how 3 hours in your comedies just become singing.
And it's also just saying words.
So again, the connection between Monsanto and Times Beach is thin, has never been canon. So is there a story where Monsanto was confirmed to knowingly poison an entire town and say nothing? Yes!
Woo! Beep, beep.
Let's talk about Anniston, Alabama.
No.
Anniston.
This will be the longest of the 3 stories, so
shit.
strap in, my friends.
I'm strapping. Put your
Strapping.
seatbelt on.
All right. I will give you the briefest amount of context before the story.
Okay.
Swan Chemical Company, not Monsanto, established a chemical plant in Anniston, Alabama in 1929. Monsanto bought it in 1935 and manufactured PCBs at the plant until 1971.
PCBs.
PCBs. So
Shout out to episode 1.
Yeah, PCBs are back.
PCBs are back. If you didn't listen to episode 1, you might not know what that is. But just brief. I mean, it's the stuff in like plastics, adhesive, tape, oil.
Caulk.
Caulk. I wanted to say caulk, and then I literally couldn't remember the word, so I'm really glad you like picked it out of my brain.
Oh, yeah, that's not
Grout.
Grout.
And it was banned in 1979 for being incredibly carcinogenic, and Monsanto made its living doing it, manufacturing PCBs. So they often used neighboring creeks and land spots to dump their runoff. Monsanto did.
Oh, God.
Damn.
Here's an anecdote from Michael Grumwald at the Washington Post. Quote, in the fall of 1966, Monsanto hired a Mississippi State University biologist named Denzel Ferguson to conduct some studies around its Anniston plant. Ferguson arrived with tanks full of bluegill fish, which he caged in cloth containers and submerged at various points like along the creek. This is what he reported to Monsanto in the results of Snow Creek. Quote, all 25 fish lost equilibrium and turned on their sides in 10 seconds. All were dead within 3.5 minutes.
What?
Recalls one of Ferguson's grad students, quote, it was like dunking fish in battery acid.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my God, those fish were like, ah! They didn't even have time to say goodbye.
Man, what's going on?
They were looking at their tank mates like, what the? They didn't even have time to say, I love you.
By the way, I
Tried to say I'll be there. Waiting for. See, that's right, yeah, they died. Who are you waiting for? Who are you waiting for?
Once again, unintelligible.
I can't believe it. That's so fast.
That's so
You can make a
fast.
cup of noodle in shorter time than it took that bluegill to die. And that bluegill took so long to get that big. I already know.
Ugh.
If you listen to that last episode of Busted Business Bureau about lab rats, then you already know how much money he probably paid to get those fish.
Damn.
Oh, my God, you're so right. Oh, look at you
My
making those
God.
connections between my podcasts that I don't even make. This story differs greatly from that of Time Beach in that Monsanto's company policy was to simply dump the poison straight into the town. Whereas in Times Beach, Monsanto all but confirmed knowingly sold poison to a guy to blast onto a town, internal company documents that still survive to this day prove that Monsanto knowingly disposed of its chemical runoff straight into Anniston. Here's some figures. Numbers.
Oh, shit.
Between the entirety of 1929 to 1971, 80 million pounds of PCBs were produced. 60,000 pounds of PCBs were emitted into the atmosphere. 1.8 million pounds were dumped into the streams, such as Snow Creek, and 68 million pounds of contaminated wastes were deposited in an open pit located on the site.
Open pit.
In other words, in the heart of Anniston's black community. That is where they do most of the dumping.
We've reached the racism section, finally.
Finally, we have arrived.
Also, I must stress that I am black. Don't take any of the jokes I'm about to make.
By the way,
that
Just
feeling,
me dealing with the pain.
that feeling when you remember that podcasts are an audio forward medium.
Yeah, it's going to get weird.
oh yeah. It's hard to use my words to explain just how toxic Anniston, Alabama became over time.
Oh, God. Because, that's so much.
You hear numbers like 60 million, 80 million, or whatever, and it's just hard to abstract.
It's difficult to conceptualize.
I just did that right into the mic.
It's like-
wanted my last drop.
Going back to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's like you poured the toxin that made them turtles, but the entire city of New York is now Ninja Turtles.
I want to live inside your mind.
What's going on?
Oh, I'm
in that
sorry.
beautiful mind?
I'm sorry, I heard toxins, which brought me to where I arrived.
By the way, Blender Bluid is black.
that needs to be understood going forward.
Oh, God.
Yet, hundreds of gallons a day were being dumped straight into the water surrounding the area. People fished there. They planted plum trees there. There's a tradition in town dating back more than a century of people, picking clay straight from the ground and eating it. A tradition I don't understand, but is a tradition of the town.
Kind of an African thing.
Yeah. Monsanto knowingly dumped this slow-acting poison straight into their nature, into their homes,
100
functionally
gallons
into their bodies.
100 milk jugs a day.
I don't know if that's the exact numbers of a
Reparations.
day. Literally reparations. It is insane. Similar to Times Beach, this was not discovered for years. Monsanto closed the plant in 1971, fully knowing that the PCB pollution was a problem, as we'll find out.
And it's going to stick around.
Yeah, it's going to stick around. And PCBs were federally banned in 1979, I think. So, when did any meaningful legal action happen addressing the inevitable human horrors that befell the residents of Anniston? Any guesses? 1993.
Oh, my
God damn!
God. No.
So
Black people were breakdancing on top of PCB this whole time. Jesus.
They were.
I am black. Need you to know this.
What's that Lady Gaga quote? Eat it, chew on it, swallow it, spit on it.
you're getting there.
Yeah.
Not shit it out and not unafraid to reference or not reference.
Yeah. That's the residents of this town with PCB.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
For decades, and this is clear from the many interviews I read, people just thought they were cursed with bad health in the town. Not like a literal curse, but they just
Right.
thought like,
Yeah.
well, we're
People
sick.
who live here get sick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because there's no one manifestation of dioxin poisoning, like from chloracne from direct exposure to uterine cancer in a 10-year-old, which
oh
happened.
my God.
To the townspeople of Anniston having twice the national average of diabetes, it's hard to assume you're all under the same condition
Right.
of dioxin poisoning.
If you don't all have the same symptoms. Yeah.
And PCBs are invisible. They enact a slow sort of violence that encourages different ailments in different people's
And
bodies.
they don't taste like anything.
And for a more scientific explanation of what I mean by encourages different ailments, I would listen to episode 2 if you can stomach it. So it's baffling to me that this was the status quo for over half a century. Because again, mind you, it's not the same thing they were manufacturing, because PCBs are different than the thing that was being manufactured in the natural
Right.
plant in 1949. But still, Monsanto knew some shit was going on.
Yeah.
So, what tipped everybody off? Why did people start suing? How did they figure this out? Despite the Superfund cavalcade in the 80s, Monsanto remained pretty mum about the condition of Anniston, Alabama. We'll find out the extent that they knew later, but even the one from the 1966 fish example, which again, Monsanto contracted that to happen,
Right.
made it clear that they knew it was bad, and kept going anyway. They started making some skeevy moves in the early 90s, trying to buy out properties of people surrounding the plant, haphazardly heading a cleanup effort, and people started talking and contacting lawyers, saying, we think something's going on here.
Why is this person in a hazmat suit trying to put fish into the creek behind my yard? And why are the fish dying instantly?
Why are they trying to buy my church? Why are they trying to say, if you sign this and say nothing about Monsanto, we'll give you this amount of money? One lawyer, Donald Stewart, who is way more awesome than the sentence gives him credit for, I just didn't have time to go into it, started organizing a class action lawsuit in Anniston. His is titled Abernathy v. Monsanto, and I'll let Marie Monique Robin lay it out. Quote, the first stage consisted of organizing blood tests and fatty tissue analyses of more than 3,500 plaintiffs to measure their PCB levels. These tests, which could only be conducted by specialized laboratories, cost about $1,000 each. Stewart moved heaven and earth to get his hands on company documents proving that it had known of the toxicity of PCBs. He minutely scrutinized the depositions of Monsanto representatives, and he came across a pearl. According to a company lawyer, a, quote, mountain of documents, 500,000 pages, had disappeared from the St. Louis offices, and they'd been deposited in a library of a New York law firm that represented Monsanto.
Whoa.
Stewart asked to consult them, and he was told that the documents were inaccessible to him because they were protected by the work product doctrine. So Stewart turned to the judge. In a crucial decision, the judge ordered Monsanto to open up its archives. Bang, bang!
Yay! What's in Pandora's box?
What did they find? And now it's my turn to sing. I've been here for 3 hours.
What's in the box?
What's in the box? October 11th, 1937, after attending a meeting in which other chemical
Wait,
factory...
we're going back in time.
Yeah, we're going back in time.
Whoa.
October 11th, 1937, after attending a meeting in which other chemical factory owners were discussing the newfound concern over PCB poisoning. So this is starting to be a concern in 1937.
Oh my God.
Monsanto had ordered some animal tests. Again, October 11th, 1937, an internal company memo read the following. Quote, experimental works in animals show that prolonged exposure to PCB vapors will lead to systemic toxic effects. Repeated bodily contact with the liquid may lead to an acne-form skin eruption. October 11th, 1937. So you get at most 2 years of saying that they didn't know this plant was going to poison its resident. Like, at most. You get 2 years of
Right.
them not knowing.
Yeah.
After that, they know.
Yeah. Because they ran their own tests. And they were like,
Oops.
oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
Oh, mm-hmm.
That is the scientific method. 1955,
Okay.
they're doing an experiment with PCB use in submarines for the Navy. And,
Oh, no, don't put that in a sub.
quote, skin applications of Pydrol 150. Oh, I'm sorry, I never explained this. PCBs refer to 200, there's 200 different PCBs. all of which are incredibly
bad.
carcinogenic. So when I say like a reference to a specific PCB like Pydrol 150, I'm still talking about PCBs.
Yeah.
Skin applications of Pydrol 150 caused the death of all rabbits tested. No matter
All rabbits. Those rabbits went the same way as the fish.
No matter how we discussed the situation, it was impossible to change their thinking that Pydrol 150 is just too toxic for use in a submarine. So that's like Monsanto coming out of this discussion with the Navy.
Right.
1958. So again, mind you, they're producing it and dumping it in Anniston this entire time. Like in the heart of just the black community in Anniston. There's like a different spot where I guess white residents have flocked. Obviously, the one dump spot.
No pit.
No pit. 1958. Internal company documents referencing newly forming environmental regulations say the following, quote, "It is our desire to comply with necessary regulations, but to comply with the minimum, and to not give any unnecessary information which could very well damage our sales position in the synthetic hydraulic fluid field." So also explicitly we're getting the pitch that they are doing this to protect sales. Right? Like
They're
not-
covering their asses.
Yes.
Damn.
1965. It's baffling because, again, this was 1935 to 1971. They're producing all of this.
Right.
And so we're reading internal company documents throughout history. God, this is a comedy podcast, by the way.
Zoinks!
Zoinks! Should I do it in the silly voice? In 1965, I want to shout out Clown Nose.
Bing bong. Remember Bing Bong? You remember Bing Bong?
I remember Bing Bong.
From Inside Out?
Oh, that one too, but the Coney Island guy.
Coney Island Bing Bong.
Bing Bong. Remember that? Remember that?
You say remember as if I've ever been to Coney Island.
Group trip to Coney Island after Sauget.
Okay. Any direct flights from Sauget to Coney Island? I know there's not an airport. We can make a water landing.
Let's do it. In 1965, an internal memo reported a telephone conversation with the head of an electrical company that used like a specific PCBs and engine coolant.
Oh, yeah.
This
Give me a name.
manufacturer had apparently said that his own plant, that in his own plant, they kept spilling it on the floor. The memo,
Dingus move.
dingus move. They're just spilling it everywhere. They kept accidentally spilling it. So a Monsanto employee, in advising this manufacturer, says the following, quote, "I was brutally frank and told them that this had to stop before he killed somebody with liver or kidney damage." So that
they
is
know.
explicitly saying, I know exactly what happens. Not exactly, but like you get liver or kidney damage if
Right.
you are exposed to this frequently.
And
which
it also shows that they are willing to be frank about the effects as long as it is protecting people who provide them business.
precisely. So they know. I couldn't have said it any better myself. It's common company knowledge that this shit is poisonous. They also advise customers against dumping it in rivers. Like there's separate ones that I just haven't written down here. Exposing themselves to it in high quantities, etc. I have felt. I said feel out if you want to include this. So I guess I will include it.
Feel the vibe, yeah.
I said feel out the vibe. I'll feel out the vibe and I'll do it.
Okay.
Oh, I see why I wrote this. So once again, I want to circle back. We're talking about Abernathy v. Monsanto, which is the Anniston, Alabama case, saying like you fucked us up. And the way that it works, this is explained very well by Ellen Griffith Spears in Baptized in PCBs. The Abernathy plaintiffs could not argue anything about their cancer or other adverse health effects. There's like one bizarre specific precedent in Alabama that's like, if you are exposed to a poison, you have to have developed the sickness in under 2 years of exposure and then like formed your lawsuit. Like it can't be, the time frame is impossibly small.
Right.
Between identifying when you were poisoned or exposed, I should say, and when you get sick.
And the Abernathy case is like almost a decade after the dumping.
Decades, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, you can't tell exactly when you were exposed. Like,
Right.
unless you're in Nitro, West Virginia in 1949 and it
Yeah.
exploded in your face. You
Yeah.
can't really say when you were
Because it's
exposed.
like cumulative over time, and it's like in the
Exactly.
air and in the water and in soil.
That's
so
crazy.
yeah.
You might as well just say, don't snitch.
That's actually what the case is called. Don't snitch.
Don't snitch versus Monsanto.
So instead, the Abernathy trial relies on, one, the emotional stress of finding out that you had like abnormal PCB levels in your blood, and two, the damages to their homes being like devalued because of the things that come out of
Oh,
PCBs.
huh. Okay, that's smart. Okay.
Damn.
Yeah, so that is like their legal case against Monsanto. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Slay.
The black community! Help us!
I feel like this is going to get way exciting. Quote, This is from Ellen Griffith Spears. The jury's decision was stunning and swifter than anyone had predicted. After deliberating for literally 5.5 hours, the jury unanimously voted Monsanto and its corporate partners liable on 6 possible counts: suppression of truth, negligence, trespass, nuisance, wantonness, and outrage. Fuck off, guilty.
Look what I'm talking about. Black people getting shit done.
The actual counts are so silly to me. Wantonness is my favorite one.
Yeah. Tag yourself.
Yeah.
Quote, the Abernathy jury, which is the one with Donald Stewart, again, had ruled against Monsanto in early 2002. The penalty phase of the trial dragged on for... Pardon?
I was 3, you were 4. In 2002.
Oh, yes. You were talking about my age.
Yes.
Yes. I was like... You can any references to my personal backstory or history are just wiped from my mind. I'm only Monsanto right now. The Abernathy jury had ruled against Monsanto in early 2002. The penalty phase of the trial dragged on for another 1.5 years, making this the longest jury trial in Alabama history. Because, of course,
oh my God.
By July 2003, the jury was still working its way through the 3,500 plaintiffs, 20 people at a time, routinely returning substantial financial awards to almost everyone. It's like you had to show up and be like, can I have money, please? And they'd be like, you can have this much. At the same time as the Abernathy one, there's another big one being organized called Tolbert versus Monsanto. You want to know who the lead lawyer on this is?
Let's go.
Johnny Cochran.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about! Black people are out here, dude. Out here.
I need to sit here and talk about Johnny Cochran for a moment, okay?
Please.
I tweeted about this recently, but...
Follow Christian on Twitter.
At Busted Biz Bureau. I am white and Gen Z and did not have any opinions on Johnny Cochran. I just knew generally that a lot of people don't like him. Like, I knew the one Book of Mormon reference where he's in hell, or like, that's just my general understanding of Johnny Cochran. Through researching this podcast, he's come up twice, and he's fucking awesome. Like, this guy fucking rocks. What?
Greatest lawyer of all time.
Yeah. This guy constantly is standing up for like against racism in the workplace, or he was in the Lockheed Martin episode. Like, this guy's everywhere. He fucking rules. Anyways, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about Johnny Cochran.
Why do people not like him?
Because he did the
OJ
case. Look, he did pick the side of the blacks on that one.
But also, what I find compelling, I haven't seen the trial or the, is that a Ryan Murphy joint?
Yeah.
Yeah? I haven't seen any of that. But from what I read, it was like, he made this case against like systemic police framing. And that was very rousing and moving that I would be curious to read more about because holy shit, like, good for him.
Yeah.
We're fans of his work.
I am a huge fan of Johnny Cochran's work. Especially the things that I've seen just from this podcast alone.
Top notch lawyer.
Yeah, he slays. Any other opinions on Johnny Cochran?
Also, just honestly, real cool name.
Right. Also, hot.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Let's say
I'm
it.
sorry.
I don't think I've ever seen a picture.
He's a good looking dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look him up.
Very stylish.
Anyways, instead of Cochran's case going to trial, bringing even more media attention to Anniston and Monsanto, something shocking happens. Quote, on August 20th, 2003, nearly everyone was surprised when attorneys for Monsanto and those representing the now more than 21,000 plaintiffs agreed to settle the Anniston PCV case. The global settlement, totaling $700 million,
Oh my God.
including cleanup costs, was the largest award to remedy industrial pollution at a single site in U.S. history.
Whoa.
So they literally just paid to make it go away.
You would think it's maybe a huge slay. Like, that's not a lot of people getting or it comes out to be $600 million because $100 million is designated for cleanup.
Right.
You'd think it's a huge slay, but considering the millions of dollars in lawyer fees,
Yeah.
and the fact that they, here's what they decided to do, which is so stupid. The Abernathy trial had like 3,500 plaintiffs, and Tolbert had 18,000. They split the $300 million up equally.
No.
Yeah.
Damn.
Between the two trials?
Between the two trials.
But
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So,
That's so upsetting.
Johnny Cochran can only do so much.
the man can only do so much. I can imagine Johnny Cochran was a lot of why this had to have settled because, like, already this was a big stink in Anniston, Alabama against Monsanto, and having Johnny Cochran's name attached to it, like, that was just going to be an even bigger thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Monsanto was probably like, oh, fuck.
We've seen your work.
Right. Just make it go away. Just like, here, take money. We have money. We can make more money.
That's about what happened. Yeah. As always, Monsanto lawyers appeal and appeal and appeal until many residents die and the money's not even worth it anymore because the money, like, isn't given out for quite a long time.
And also, it's like split up. Like, it's like a couple $1,000s then, with like taxes and everything.
Really, not a ton going to people.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I have included this. Like, the fund is to say, okay, we're giving you, let's say, $18,000 to move to the other side of town. A lot of people are like, I'm sick and old. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Thanks, I guess, but I still live in a toxic wasteland.
Right.
And I would rather not move. I would rather not live in a toxic wasteland. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Comedy podcast. So additionally, this becomes a Superfund site.
Yuck.
Yuck, yuck, yuck. This is a special kind of Superfund site, though, where people get to like stick around. Even those meant to move are, again, generally unable to because of factors. Also, public interest was... I have the greatest sentence in a second. Public interest was waning on the subject. In talking about waning public interest in Anniston, Spears writes the greatest sentence I've ever read. Quote, in other news, Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice Roy Moore was waging a fight to keep the Ten Commandments monument in one of the courthouses at the state capitol. Like, that's what took the news. Okay, whatever.
Jesus.
I'm the only one who thinks that's funny.
Oh my god.
Whatever. I'm the one who thinks that Roy Moore being like, 10 Commandments is hilarious.
We need it in the hall.
Please. Like,
Otherwise, how will the people know what the law means?
the 10 Commandments. Spears
The
does...
original listicle, I'll say it.
God damn.
Amy, I'm canceling you. The 10 Commandments are the original listicle. Fuck you.
It was laid out poorly, though. No SEO. Carved on stone tablets, no reach.
Jeez.
Weak. Spears ends it quite optimistically. Quote, despite the inadequacies of the PCB settlement and its messy fallout, the legal victory over Monsanto is evidence of what grassroots groups can achieve. Because her book, I would highly recommend reading it, talks about the grassroots efforts to even get all this happening in the first place. Much thanks to Donald Stewart, who I think was a senator at one point. Anyways. Even still, the people are living in a toxic wasteland. I'll end the Anniston part with an interview with a resident in Scientific American. He says, quote, you see that plum right there, Fraser said, eyeing one growing wild in the woods next to a house. What follows is a verbatim reading of what they wrote in Scientific American, and I love it. We used to eat them plums all the time. Man, this used to be the thang right here. Thang with 3 A's. I used to tear these up. He plucks it and then turns it in his hand a few times, fighting the urge to taste it. Then he sidearms it back into the woods, turns and walks toward the PCB dumps at the bottom of Montrose.
Wow.
I find it heartbreaking.
Christian just wanted to read some African American vernacular English.
I wanted to say thang.
Yeah, exactly. This is just your
Thang with
long
3
game
A's.
to say some black people words.
Oh, you have solved racism by calling me out on the pod. I think writing thang out with 3 A's
In Scientific American.
Yeah.
fucking rocks. Yeah, in
Look,
Scientific
it ain't 3
American.
A's and you ain't a thing.
They could have just written thang, you know?
Yeah. But
Nah.
no, it was 3.
They
It
had
had to be
that.
3.
That makes me really sad, too, that he really enjoys plums. And, like...
And
pick
now he
one
has
up
to go to the
thoughtfully.
grocery store and buy ones that have been imported from somewhere else because the ones that grow in his backyard are too toxic to eat. And he's going to get stomach, whatever.
Yeah, just horrifying conditions of the human body.
Yeah.
It's fucked
Yeah.
up, dog.
No, he's fine.
Reparations.
Yeah, reparations.
Comedy podcast.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, reparations indeed.
No, I was really thinking, like, the image of him holding a plum is just so, it's so ingrained in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm just, like, wistfully holding a plum.
Yo, let black people eat plums, dog.
Right? That's the main takeaway of this podcast. Let black people eat plums.
Yeah.
Crucially, these lawsuits in the 90s and the settlements and whatever also marked the pivoting, as I remember, of Monsanto towards biotechnology. So they're like, man, this chemical shit isn't working out.
Yeah.
PCBs are
people
banned.
People are getting really upset.
For
when
whatever reason.
Yeah, I just, like, don't
Yeah.
understand. But, like, we're getting a lot of flack. So let's just, like, change.
We're not supposed to do war crimes.
Look, guys, our favorite race hates us. What are we doing if the blacks aren't on our side?
PCBs were banned. The herbicide keeps getting them sued by Vietnam veterans. Rent is due. Monsanto needs to find a new project. Okay,
Johnny
that's where we're at.
Cochran's at the door.
Johnny Cochran's at the door.
They're feeling the heat.
Russell Bliss is like blasting their oil all over Times Beach. The actual company that had to pay out the hundreds of millions to Anniston, Alabama residents is actually a spin-off of Monsanto called Solutia Inc. Because they literally were like, we can't do this. So they like split it off, said that's their problem, not ours.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and then Solutia went bankrupt a few years later.
I love that for them.
Goofy. Anyways, I mentioned the pivot to biotechnology because Monsanto's flagship biotechnological product is a particular herbicide not meant for war called Roundup. It's going to be the subject of the next episode.
Okay.
And the environmental damage from Roundup is interesting, so I wanted to end this episode on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be a shorter story. This is called Soda Springs and Slag. That's what I've titled this section.
Alrighty. Ready to slag.
Ready
Soda
to slag.
Springs.
Ready to slag. For the final time this episode, let's rewind. We're going in a time machine back to 1952. You both doing the fucking time machine sound effect.
Well, Christian, why would you do it with us?
Yeah,
I didn't think to do it.
you gotta do it.
My Monsanto establishes a mining facility in Soda Springs, Idaho. This is our final Superfund
They are going
site.
to hit every single one of
I
the
know.
all 50 states.
May I mention
Get
that
Rust Belt.
I know we're talking about 3 Superfund sites. Monsanto's a part of at least 30.
Oh my
Jesus
God.
Christ.
They're showing their whole butthole.
During
Like a
Monsanto's
cat in heat.
During Monsanto's pivot towards herbicides in the 50s, they also... That was really funny. I'm so sorry. Like a cat in heat. During Monsanto's pivot towards herbicides in the 50s, they also start laying out the groundwork for what will eventually become Roundup. The key ingredient in Roundup is glyphosate, which is not made in a lab. It's created by extracting and refining phosphate from elemental phosphorus.
Mm-hmm.
As you remember...
White phosphorus.
White phosphorus.
I'm about to also.
So elemental phosphorus can be refined into several different things, one of them being white phosphorus. There's also not incendiary white phosphorus that you can make out of it. And yeah, so literally the next sentence I wrote was they're doing double duty in southeastern Idaho by making herbicides out of phosphorus and incendiary weapons for war crimes.
Oh, shit.
Per CivilEats.com, the plant in Soda Springs, Idaho is, quote, the only plant in North America that can refine phosphate ore into elemental phosphorus. Ore meaning ORE. Mm-hmm. Monsanto started selling Roundup in 1974. Earlier, it sold the phosphorus for use in washing detergent. That's interesting. This is from me. A byproduct of refining the glyphosate is a molten wet substance called slag.
Molten wet?
I called it molten and wet.
Slag.
I don't... Slag. It's like really...
Slag.
Because that joke will not
Slag.
work on just audio.
Listen, you need to watch the video to see what Bluid was doing for slag. Slag. Does molten and wet not work together? Do those words not mean
I am
something?
thinking of like cold lava.
Yeah.
Oh, it's warm. It's warm lava. I just wanted to think of words that were poetic, and I came up with molten and wet. But it's just sludgy and bright, and it's called slag. It then hardens into rock, or it cools into rock when it's done. Apparently, slag is also a derogatory term for women in the UK. I think that's slag. Yeah.
I think I may
that's-
have heard that.
Yeah.
In my time in UK.
Bart Elmore describes the Soda Spring plant like this, quote, I went to visit last summer, and what I found was startling. I stood just beyond a barbed wire fence at about 9 o'clock at night and watched as trucks dumped molten red heaps of radioactive refuse over the edge of what is fast becoming a mountain of waste. This dumping happened every 15 minutes, lighting up the night sky. Horses grazed in a field just a few dozen yards away, glowing in the radiating rays coming from the lava-like sludge.
Oh my God. That's a horror movie.
You might be thinking, did he just say radioactive? Yes.
Radioactive!
No.
Sing it. Sing it. You're all on her.
Sue Stevenson, a reporter.
The chemical.
She's inhaling the chemicals, to be clear.
Oh my God.
This would be really funny if you've listened to all 3 episodes. Sue Stevenson, a reporter in Tennessee, recalls speaking to workers who have worked with slag, saying the following, quote, I've spoken to former workers who were burned by slag and phosphorus, whose boots auto-ignited, so their boots just burst into flames, whose hands and bodies were scarred by radioactive slag and much more. Back to Bart Elmore, quote, for years, this slag was actually, I'm so sorry, sold to the town of Soda Springs, and people built their homes and roadways out of it.
No.
Oh my God.
Everything comes back to a fucked up ass road, right? In the 1980s,
The road
however,
to hell, paved with slag.
Literally, the road to hell is paved with slag. You're getting quotable this episode.
Okay.
Me and Bluid are just sitting here gargling what we're saying.
Sing a song lyric.
Really hitting my stride now that we're in the delusional phase of things.
In the 1980s, however, the EPA conducted a radiological survey of the community and warned that citizens might be at risk for elevated gamma ray exposure. Like it's the fucking Hulk.
Stalk. She-Hulk. Every
This is the second time that Mark Ruffalo has made an appearance.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The study yeah, he really has. The study concluded that if business continued as usual in Soda Springs, within 4 decades, quote, the probability of contracting cancer due to exposure from elemental phosphorus slag would be 1 in 2,500 in Porticello and 1 in 700 in Soda Springs.
Oh my God.
As you can imagine, that's a very abnormally high cancer rate.
That's like 2/3 higher.
Yeah.
More.
Damn. How
So-
do you know the regular cancer rate?
It's fascinating.
Amy?
Well, it was the comparison between the two towns, right?
Yeah. Oh, so you were, I guess, but Pocatello is a nearby town that's also like slag poisoned.
Oh, okay, but it's just not as close to the slag poison.
Exactly.
Okay.
Interesting.
This gamma ray shit plus selenium poisonings led the EPA to once again declare this plant and the surrounding town of 3,000 people a Superfund site.
Beep beep.
Slaying slag. I kept that story short because it's still unfolding. Like, a lot of it's intimately tied to Roundup lawsuits that we talked about in episode 4. That, like, I was talking about lawsuits that came out in, like, 2017.
Yeah.
They're still being litigated as of 2021.
Sure.
So there's not a lot that we know about, especially a town that's so small, of, like, disastrous health effects or
Right.
whatever.
Jesus
Right.
But we just know that it's fucking radioactive, and they
Oh
built their
my
houses out of it.
Radioactive.
They had to stop selling that in, like, the 80s. The EPA was like, don't do that
That's
anymore.
nuts.
You can't. Anyways,
Like, is it not enough that you have become an integral part of, like, America's billionaire war machine? You now have to, like, make pennies on the dollar, like, by selling the stuff that is, like, you don't need anymore to, like, people who don't know any better.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the commitment to being as bad as humanly possible and to make it as worse as humanly possible is deeply upsetting. And slag.
Wild.
And slag.
It's evil.
The reason why I structured the episode like this with the 3 stories was to emphasize Monsanto's reach into rural parts of the country and the globe to make it easier for them to fly by unnoticed. Not to say that nobody's doing any advocacy.
Right.
I've tried to mention a lot that like a
Yeah.
lot of people are. I guess being a Superfund site isn't necessarily unnoticed, but it's harder for people to advocate for themselves and feel a sense of community when like this is happening in all different parts.
Yeah.
And you don't even understand that what's happening to you is part of this global thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you put all the Superfund site victims together, imagine what they'd accomplish. Also, since we've been recording for 3 hours, I've lost the thread of just like how fucked up this is. Like, can you imagine if any of this story alone was just one company?
Yeah.
Like the fact that we're 3 episodes deep and it's still one
Yeah.
company. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine if this is like
That's
fucking
nuts.
Toys R Us? You know, like it's sad, man.
Yeah.
So, this is the transition into episode 4, like the logical thread that's going to bring us there. Glyphosate grew into a multi-billion-dollar product, one that when twinned with the herbicide-resistant genetically engineered cotton, soy, and corn seeds, led to widespread adoption of these crops. And so episode 4 is going to be the Roundup episode.
Cotton strikes again.
And here's... we're solving racism today.
Jesus.
Here's my sources.
It's not a real list. It's just a piece of paper that says y'all can't read. Don't let Christian fool you.
Yeah. I've just made up every single thing that I talked to you about for the last 3 hours. But,
That is crazy.
yeah, we're about a third of the way through-ish. How are we doing?
We gotta go burn them down to the ground. I think I like.
Yeah, it's pitchfork time.
It's what the hell?
Yeah.
This is just rough. So, once again, like, I just wanted to emphasize how fucked up this is. It is the busted business bureau, after all. So we're sitting here busting businesses.
This
but-
shit's busted.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom how much I didn't know before going in.
Yeah. I have learned a lot.
That's wild.
And if you also want to read the material that has been extensively quoted, it's The World According to Monsanto by Marie Monique Robin,
Wow. Yes.
which is number 2 on the 9 sources that have been cited in this episode.
Yeah, they were like, because number 1's Baptized in PCBs by Ellen Griffith Spears. I did a lot of book reading for this. Do you know how many cafes I sat in reading horror upon horror, like unfathomable human tragedies, and then just like getting a little jasmine tea?
If you want to know more about white phosphorus, Google the Sharingan from Naruto and the evolutions of the eye technique itself, and you'll see the eternal flame that can't be put out. It's very similar.
I will put that in the sources of this
Please do.
podcast.
Please do.
Yeah.
The notes.
Alright.
Make sure to, again, support Christian and
Yeah.
this
Aw.
podcast on Patreon.
I know you got $5 a month.
$5 a month. It's
$5 a
cheaper
month.
than a Disney Plus subscription, and I know
is-
you only watch Moana once a month.
Damn.
Well, thank you both. I will see you both during episode 4. What a pleasure it has been to have you two clowns
Yeah.
here.
Now that I know that we're gonna be on video, I'm gonna like try and turn something for the next time that I'm here, because I really just woke up this morning and said, podcast.
You woke up beautiful. All right. I will see you two beauties next time. I will see all of you listening next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.